Howdy, y'all. I'm back, and sorry about that. I hit the wrong button. Anyway, I'm back, y'all, with some more info on what you need to know how to do certain things. Now, I'm not saying that people don't know what they're doing, but you should always take into account certain vehicles have different reload speeds and certain tanks have different armor values. So you gotta be careful with what you're doing. Now the tank I'm gonna say in this video is the most lightly armored main battle tank is the 0F40. You've got to take care with that thing. Everything can kill you from any angle, so if you're playing with that vehicle, you've got to take into account that no one is going to just randomly fire at you. They will fire at you because you're likely an easy kill. So, if you're using this thing, the 0F40 main battle, use its mobility against the enemy, like the reverse speed and the gun handling. Just be careful with how you play it. Not everyone's going to play fair when you're up against one of those. Now, in this video, I'm going to tell you the problems with guns that have higher damage compared to other tanks. Namely, the Starship and the M109 and all the other self-propelled guns. Now, in my opinion, if you're going to fire against people that are... The thing you should fire mainly in the Starship is not the heat rock, not the missiles. And the weird thing is, what I don't understand people don't take into account. Well, in my mind, most people think, oh yeah, fire high explosive at lightly armored vehicles. You don't have to fire it just at lightly armored vehicles. If you fire it at like heavily armored vehicles, like main battle tanks, you will do damage as well. Now, the stupid thing is, in my opinion, most people think the Starship is a bad tier to go through. It's not entirely. It depends on the person using it. Now, you see the loadout I have with the Starship. High explosive, heat fin stabilized rocket. Never use the rocket unless you guaranteed a kill. It just will not work all that well. And take into account the M60A Starship is not the fastest thing in the earth. So you need to take into account your mobility and your firepower. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to use the Star in correlation to other vehicles. And no, you can't fire this thing on the move either. its mobility just is not quick enough to catch. Use the tactic I'm doing. Cover. Fire from it. Hang on a second, and... damn! Well, that's less health than he's supposed to have normally. Still, I don't know how that didn't kill him. I mean, I am firing high explosives, so he's lightly armored, so that should have insta-killed him. It should have overmatched his armor more than the armor itself, as well as the angling or the sloping. That makes no sense. However, that I can one-shot. But you gotta take into account, if you look at the reload of the Starship, now I've got one of the best reload things on this tank, which is doubling my reload speed as of now. Okay, thank you. I do not want to deal with that in behind me, or beside me, let alone anywhere near me. But I digress. You gotta take into account, most guns do not have the fastest reload. Use it to your advantage. Up, hang on. Hang straight ahead. Dead. Now you see how high explosive can be used against medium and light. Up. Fire smoke in that direction. Reverse away. And let the little AMX have some cover. Alright, here we go. And damn. See the amount of damage I took in return? That is really? Really? Come on now. Quit spamming your dang smoke rounds. Dang it. Now I can't see to help you. Note to self. Also make sure your friendlies don't spam their smoke. If they spam their smoke, it's gonna miss. Really? Really? Hey, can you do me a favor? Come here. Where? I literally cannot see because some idiot is firing their smoke screen continuously. Hold this. Thank you. Bloody heck is going on behind me? Ooh, what the fud? That flew over my head. Okay. Aha! Here's a good target to go up against. An enemy starship. That weasel's almost dead. Also, note, if you're with a friendly weasel, you need to take into account that that thing is light armor and nearly about no health. So, just fire that over there. Keep moving, take barely any damage in return, have the weasel obliterated, pop around the next corner and derp it right in that guy's face. Reverse away, use the... Aha! I outsmarted ya! Oh, hello. Hold this for a second. So that's the max amount of damage to him. Stay on the move. Starship. Now, look how I take it against this starship. High explosive will always overmatch a starship. So, in future, if any of you go up against a starship, do not fire heat. Sure, heat will negate his armor. But it depends on where you aim in his armor. The aim is all that counts in this point. Sure. Most people think, oh, just aim lower glacis or aim for the turret. That will work. But if you fire high explosive at him, you will do more damage because you will knock out modules, kill crew, incapacitate, blow the tracks off, damage the gun barrel and the breech. So if you pretty much do that with any vehicle, you will do good. But in my opinion, fire high explosive at some tanks to like incapacitate them. Sure, it doesn't work all that good, but if you use it against like, you know, you say per se heavy tanks, you hit a heavy tank with a high explosive, you're bound to knock out maybe the track, the gun. Just take into account, if you fire at those spots, you will do a ludicrous amount of damage to the tank you're firing at. Just remember, certain tanks have different fire rates. And this is one of them. Meet the M109. Now, what most people think about this thing, it's garbage. It's not entirely. Now, I have gotten lucky with this thing to do shotguns. Like, get up close personal and fire the gun at, like, with the reticle and not the gun sight. It works, but in my opinion, don't do that too often. You will get killed 20% of the time. So if you're using this in, like, player versus environment, what I'd suggest, get an artillery and use it for the damage, because the more damage you do, the more experience you get. In my opinion, that's the easiest way to grind, I've found. And most people say go for the Americans in the first, when you start out. The easiest one I actually got through was the Russians, which is the bear. So if you go through the Russian bias, you will actually get to the heavies quicker than you think. If you're that good of a player and you've got a lot of skill behind you, you can do a lot of damage and you can deal a lot of it. Some people think that the higher tier guns, like the explosive guns that only fire high explosive, you can do well with them. You just have to know where to aim. Now, I'm going to show you the easiest way I've learned to play an artillery. Now, yes, and I know this is taking too long. I don't feel like pressing circle, so I'm just going to let it load. But I digress. Things you need to know when you start out in this game. Russian biased tanks are easier to play because their mobility is good when they first start. When you get to higher tiers, the mobility slightly dips. Also, this is something for new players who get to higher tiers. The BGLT Panzer 57 is the feared. You need to be afraid of that thing because it's got an auto loader and a rocket. So if you see a Bielga Panzer, that's the first target to knock out because the rockets do damage as well as the gun. And it will do continuous damage. Regardless, if you hit it, you've got to kill it. Knock it out. Render it inert. That's the only way you're going to do good against it. And don't attack it at one at a time. If he's the last tank on his team, attack all at once. The more people that attack him, the less chance he's going to be able to reload in time. And also, you can trick players into firing their guns. All you do is move. And P.S. New players, if you're not good at artillery or self-propelled, I wouldn't get the self-propelled guns in this game if you're not that good at them. Now take this into account. I'm not playing this as an artillery or self-propelled. I'm going to play it as a TD. I found that that works a lot easier than what most people say. Sorry about that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it just doesn't. Now, they're going to reload before me, so he's got it. See? That's another thing to take into account. Most tanks can reload before you can. This is all mine, though. Let it fully aim, and got it! See? You've got a 50-50 chance hitting things with this gun. Tank. Got him. See, when you get good, when you first start an artillery tank or self-propelled, they're not as easy as they seem. It takes patience to fire this thing. Sure, you can just fire the gun willy-daggum-nilly, but that's not how it works. Hang on. My friendly's asking for assistance. See the Belga? You see the Belga Panzer? See how he's like doing that? That's what I mean about that tank is scary. Where did that even go? But I will say this. Any player who starts with the artillery or self-propelled, take into account your reload and your firepower. How did that miss? Oh god. Ow. Okay, aim. Load. Fire! See, if you don't want to go arty mode, you can try TD mode. All it takes is a bit of skill and know-how. Sure, I may not be killing a lot of vehicles, but I'm dealing damage regardless. Oh, for crying out. That's just annoying. I don't appreciate when people do that. I really don't. If I wanted to pop smoke, I would have done it myself. Really? Okay, take into account some teammates are going to be jerks. They will fire their smoke at you when they think there's nothing to kill. But remember, artillery is not the easiest thing to play. But like I said, if you know what you're doing with certain tanks, you can get... The stupid thing is, I don't understand some people saying it's not worth I just don't get what most people say about tank destroyers. They say they stink. Sometimes I don't understand certain vehicles. Most people just don't understand certain things. But in digress, most people just don't pay attention to what tank they're using. Just have some patience, fellas. We'll get into a battle eventually. It just takes a few minutes. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it gets you in quick, sometimes it just doesn't. Everything takes time. You got to have patience. To be honest. The weird thing is, most of the time, things just don't work out the way they should. But like I said earlier, some heavy tanks work different. The Type 80 is Japanese. The only good thing about the Type 80 that I know of as of now, if you get hit with a rocket in the turret with the cage armor, what that does is it nullifies the rocket sometimes. But it has a 50-50 chance to stop, or... in other words, it'll sometimes blow up on the armor, other times it will blow up on the tank. Just keep in mind that your armor is only as good as how you angle or use the tank itself. Some things just don't work, though. Like, people say rockets do more damage. In some cases, yes. In other cases, no. The best explosive round I've found that works better is high explosive. And it's mainly the Starship that has that, because the 152 does 1,000 damage if it penetrates with its high explosive. So you'll pretty much take off, shred half the health of maybe 5 out of 10 heavies. But take into account, you have to aim for a spot you can penetrate. And I mean that literally. I'm only saying this because I know. Like lightly armored vehicles, high explosive, regardless the penetration, it will always deal damage. The only tank high explosive will have a hard time dealing: long-range engagements and heavy tanks. But regardless, you should fire high explosive at a heavy tank to disable parts of it. Like, the gun barrel, the gun breech, the track. And I'm not saying that because it doesn't work. It works. And it works well. And I'm just saying these things because they're true. It does happen. And P.S., if you're thinking, oh, the Leopard's good, it is to an extent. Use the mobility of the tank. the thing is, oh, by the way, if you're wondering what I'm firing, high explosive squash head. The heck just hit me? Oh, it was a walker. Okay, that's weird. I know you're there. Stupid scorpion. Okay, sometimes elevation does screw with your aiming. Just take into account certain elevation choices will mess you up. Oh, he's almost dead. I don't even have to fire at him.
Careful in there. That's the Lions of Neckwheel Town. So proceed with extreme caution. There's no telling what they might do.
I let him pass because that was the easiest way. That, and he does barely any damage to me, and I can always go and get him. And always count on friendlies to help. Another thing, do not waste ammo on stuff like this. You can destroy it by running it over. So try to eliminate the amount of ammo you use by running stuff over. And P.S. Certain things are easy to kill on the move. Just make sure you don't hit a bump in the ground or any slight elevation change. That will mess up your sight. And you can get ram kills, but use those sparingly. They're not always a good choice. What the heck? Also, you will have teammates that don't pay attention to where they're going. And yes, they will damage your tank if they end up pushing you into a fight that you cannot deal with. Take into account your armor can only hold the fire so long. Do not always think charging in will always... Sometimes charging in is a good choice, but in that heavy's case, he's on his own. And he's taking hits from multiple different tanks. And yes, this is overkill, but I'm doing it. And remember, certain tanks, the track will eat the shell for you. Remember, tracks can get taken off in this sense. But always know this. Do not waste your repair kit unless you're in a bad fight. Or a fight that you cannot win by yourself. Hang on, I got shot from behind. Oh, they've got it. See what I said about the heavy tank fighting? That's what happens when you charge in. Continuous damage will eventually kill your tank.
is making absurd leaps of logic based on nothing. We have... Do you hear that? No. Listen. We hear the nothing. What is it, bro? I hear something. It's my gut, and it's telling me something. What's it telling you, bro? It's telling me that I'm on to something. And that means it's time to dig deeper. With your brain shovel? That's right. I think it's time to stop. I knew it. Something. The symbol of the Illuminati. Yes.
Another thing to take into account, certain tanks have better mobility than others. Now, also take into account light tanks are good for scouting. And take another thing into account. If you move fast enough, you will always outmaneuver your enemy. Just remember, don't waste shots.
Identify target.
And P.S. Vehicles to worry about that is normal. See, I don't understand how I got hit from that side. That's exactly where the hit mark came up. Hang on. On the move shot, armor, and ricochet one off my upper glacis. Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. Take another shot into the top. Angle. Ricochet another one off the upper glacis. See? Ow. That was a rock.
Let's see if they have
Identified.
That's the last time you fire a rocket at me, you little bugger. Little annoyance. Another few tanks to look out for. Tanks that have guided missile racks. They're the biggest threat to either a main or a light or medium. Always watch out for those types of tanks. You will always get hit with a rocket regardless of the situation. And I know this stuff by experience, because if you get hit multiple times in the same spot, the damage will increase. But from what most people think, they think you can do certain things with heavies.
It is an honor sharing the road with you. And of course,
Of course, in my mind, it works. Now, which tank did I want to get? In my mind, I get heavy tanks that I use.
It started with a little kind of evil-looking gremlin, a little funny guy who eventually became Coop. And so I really liked this guy, and we were friends, and we little seed friends, and they were interested in what was going on. One drawing I did, he had a little helmet, and I thought, oh, it's funny, the birdie's sort of like this little safe character. And once I had that, I said, there's a chance. And so I started to kind of put other side characters in it, but the main core, that's what I brought into the story. And here is these three characters, and it's about them, and this is how they relate, and this is what they do. And for me, it was really easy because the characters were very much based on me.
Things you should also have on your tank. Fire extinguisher, health pack, repair kit.
my ducky duck, where's our first delivery of the day? Let's see here. One loaf of Quaisy whole grains with old man McQuack in Ducktown. McQuack, time to get some blood in your beak and some hair on your head. Crazy Maine whole grain. The dough that makes your hair grow like whoa. Yep, yep. Tasty too. Easy there, Munchmaster. Hair, grow, whoa. Remember? It's a risk I'm willing to take for this yummy goodness. Ginger, stop eating. We do what? Crazy Maine whole grain.
organizing a counterstrike. But we need you to hold them at bay.